This is the I Love Success podcast. I'm Peter Jumrukovski, and I have made a vow to myself to help as many people as possible to achieve their dreams. Let's get started. Hey, and welcome to the I Love Success podcast. If you are new to the show, my name is Peter Jumrukovski. I have a big fat mission, and that is to help at least 10 million people in 10 years to go after their dreams. But right now, you are the most important person to me. The reason why you're here today is probably because you're looking for growth. You want to create a life where you're happy, you're joyful, and moving towards what you truly desire in life. I have the opportunity and honor to bring on incredible guests, and a lot of them have become my friends because for some magical reason we connect. And I do believe that this world is a beautiful place and you can connect with remarkable individuals, but sometimes you have to reach out your hand first and ask. And this is a second time coming back to Nick Velasquez. Last time we spoke, he had recently launched his new book, Learn, Improve, Master. I was fascinated by his story, so we've kept in touch, and we have actually met in person, but online we've been chatting. I've even got some good restaurant tips when I was in Japan last year, and just fascinated by this guy and how he goes deep on the things he does. So I know he's researching his new book. He spent quite some time in Japan last year, and I just wanted to bring him back and talk about that, because if you are inspired that people that dare to do their own thing and aspire to do that, I think you're going to truly enjoy this show. So Nick Velasquez, thank you and welcome to the I Love Success podcast once again.
Thanks so much for having me, man. That was a great intro. I'm humbled. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And for people, I forgot to say this. If you want to listen to our first show, it's episode 197. And that's more like background story. We talk about Learn, Improve, Master. Now we kind of, even though that's going to be our background, I don't want to repeat myself. So go back and listen to that show. And I think one thing that I really want to know, like, how have you put yourself in this position in life that you can, travel 3-4 months if you want? I saw like your Instagram post the other day, like, I'm going to be at this cafe in Montreal. If anybody want to come visit me, I looked it up on the map. I was like, shit, I need to go there and have a coffee. So like, how have you put yourself in that position where you can kind of slow down and focus on the things that truly matter to you?
All right, so I'll try to give the short version of the story, but growing up, my dream was to be a rock star. As crazy as that sounds, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play guitar. I used to play heavy metal, and that was my dream. But then I went to music school for a while, and seeing so many talented musicians, I started thinking, like, what am I going to do if this doesn't work out the way I want it to work out? And I might end up struggling for money. This could be difficult. It's already a big risk to jump into music. So like, where am I going to find that financial stability? So I decided to put that on the side, and I went to study business, and it was this thing where I was researching what was kind of like the fastest, easiest way to make money, just because I wanted to be done with it. It's like, how do I get my finances in place so I could get back to just playing guitar and not have to worry about paying bills or anything? So in that research, like, real estate kept coming up. It's like, many of the richest people in the world either made their money in real estate or kept their money in real estate. So I thought, you know what? I guess it's real estate, but like, I have no passion for real estate, so I have no identity tied to that business. But I ended up building a real estate company here in Montreal, and that's basically what pays for everything. So it's like this funny thing that I came up with new projects all the time, new businesses all the time, and I take cash from that company, and it's all a bunch of failed businesses. But I'm fortunate enough that the main one, I managed to do it well. I also had a lot of luck along the way. I was also prepared, which was another thing. So it's kind of like where luck meets preparation. So I had been training and like preparing to invest. And when finally the opportunities came my way, I went into it. So basically, it's my company that allows me to have that lifestyle that I can travel. And it doesn't really take that much. I mean, I don't travel in like luxury or anything like that. I just like being somewhere else. When I go to Japan, which I try to go once a year, I stay in Tokyo. A friend rents me an apartment. It's a small apartment, and I'm not traveling around all the time. Like a vacation is way more expensive. So
Yeah.
it sounds like it's eccentric that you spend a couple of months of the year somewhere else, but the difference in cost is not that much. And then I rent my apartment here in Montreal when I leave. So it is possible, it's within reach. And if someone can work remotely, then definitely something that can be done.
That's awesome. And when you say real estate, does that mean you own rental property or commercial property?
Correct. Yeah. I own rental property, so apartment buildings.
Wonderful. And for people that are interested in this, I think it's very cool because I'm reading this book. I think it's called Chasing Daylight, and
Okay.
it's about this CEO, KPMG CEO, that gets a verdict that he's going to die in basically 3 months. And he shares his stories. But one of the things was that his mom, at one point, he loved baseball. He wanted to be a baseball coach. And she said, you have to distinguish, passion and talent. Because sometimes, even though you're passionate about a thing, you might not be able to become, a Major League Baseball player. And it was interesting. But I'm curious, going back to you weren't passionate about real estate, but you knew it could create freedom. For people out there that are kind of thinking the same way, do you have any type of advice or tips before we get into the passion product?
Sure. So the way I did it is I started flipping because I wanted to create enough cash to then put down on a larger building for rentals, because otherwise it's too little cash flow coming in. I didn't want to have any other job on the side. So I was flipping buildings and apartments for maybe 3 years or so, while I was building on the side some cash that then I could put into a bigger property and get enough cash flow that it could sustain my lifestyle. So that was the way I did it. I mean, I've seen people who have a job on the side and then do some real estate and do some flipping, but I just wanted to do it 100%. So that was my path. That's how I chose to do it, and it worked out well for me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it was. Yeah.
And any mistakes along the path that you can share that
Oh my
somebody
God.
else could
So
learn from?
Oh, definitely. But here's the thing. So if I had to start all over, because I started my company maybe some 10 years ago or so, I think there's so many online business opportunities that you can work remotely, that you can do from your home. I would much rather do something like that. And for a while, I was running an online store as well, and it was getting some traction. It's just that I had no passion for it. So I figured, why would I spend more time trying to make more money? Like, at what cost? Do I really need much more?
Yeah.
So I gave that up. But I've seen and I have friends who went into the online business, or for example, online courses. I have a friend who owns an online academy. He does really well for himself. People who own online stores, and they have way more freedom than I do, because in the end, my business is still physical.
Yeah.
So I do need to come back every now and then. Problems arise, like you have damages, things like that. But I can't really complain with my business because it's given me the freedom that I wanted. So that was my path. But I think if I were given the chance to start all over, I would like to do something online. And last year I was planning on doing an online academy. I wanted to do like a personal development academy, but I saw the amount of work involved, and I was also going to start on this new book. So I thought, I don't think I have the bandwidth to tackle so many things at the same time. Yeah.
And just for fun, what are some of the, you failed business attempts that you have funded from your real estate business that didn't succeed, but you had a really, really good time doing it?
That I have a really good time. That's a hard question, because I think everything that I've gone into business for has been a means to an end and never an end in itself. So it was always the idea of like, how do I make more money? It doesn't matter how annoying it is. So I started this online store during the pandemic, and I was selling exercise bands because everyone had to exercise at home, right?
Yeah.
and it was blowing up. Like I was getting orders like crazy. The thing is that I was outsourcing these products to China, and then the whole logistic chain got disrupted. So no one was getting their orders, right? So I was getting nothing but complaints, and I kept selling, but no one was getting their stuff. So I keep refunding. And the crazy thing is, the customer service part of it was the worst. And people just send me messages, so much hate, and it's like, we're gonna sue you and stuff. To the point that I created an alter ego because I realized that people are less angry when women were the customer service. So I had an alter ego called Sarah. So I'll be writing emails saying, sorry about the delay. It's gonna get there soon. Love, Sarah. And then everyone was super nice to Sarah, but everyone hated Nick.
That is funny.
And I'm like, I don't need this, you know? I don't need this amount of stuff. I also, like a couple of years before, I had another online store, and I was selling this ring that looks like an ocean wave, and it was blowing up. And then I got a cease and desist letter because I had used an image that I found online. I'm like, I'm just gonna test this and see if it works. And then just randomly, the owner of the image, this company, just reached out to me and said, like, you're using our image, and that's illegal, and we're gonna sue you. So I had to take everything down, and the sales were blowing up. Like my store was going well, and then everything crashed, and I was not able to bring it back up. So there's been a lot of failure along the way. I've tried a lot of stuff, man. I tried network marketing. The other thing that I settled on was stock investing, which I do now. It's not trading, it's investing, like long-term, kind of Warren Buffett style.
Yeah.
So that's been the other thing. But for someone that wants to make like cash flow and do it quickly, I think online businesses, some of them can be a really good option.
Yeah, and let me ask you about stock invest. So you said long-term Warren Buffett style. Does that mean you do mutual funds, or you do actual stocks, or what's your strategy there?
Actual stocks. So I can spend a month, 2 months researching a company. It's mostly fundamentals. Then you kind of calculate what would be the intrinsic value of that company. And you're thinking about you're buying a business. So when you're buying stocks, you're buying pieces of a business. So when you look at it that way, in reality, you're not purchasing stocks, you're purchasing share of a business. So you do all the business analysis, and you're basically buying that business, and you're not looking to sell it. You're planning on keeping that pretty much for as long as you can. So that's been interesting, but it doesn't. So for someone listening who's starting out, it's hard to make a living out of doing that. That's more of a wealth creation strategy, more than a cash flow immediate thing. So if you want to circle back to real estate, and then the way that I started with flipping. So flipping works well as long as the market is not crashing, because then basically you're buying something, you're renovating and selling again. And yes, you're adding value in the renovation, but if the market is coming down, you might get caught in a downturn, and then now you're with this property and you're not getting any money out of it. So it's like that thing that they say, when the market's going up, everyone feels like they're super smart. So I was lucky. I was very lucky in many ways. I chased some people. There was this deal where I got a contact from someone, and they told me like, oh, he might be interested in selling. So I contacted this gentleman. He's like, look, I'm not ready. Call me in a couple months. I'll call him again in a couple months. And then same thing, call me again in a couple months. Same thing. I chased him for like a year and a half. And then finally he said, all right, I'm ready. And he sold me a property for like a very cheap price. And he knew it was cheap, and I knew it was cheap. And basically he was retiring, and he was happy to let the new breed of investors to come in. So that's like the thing of opportunity meeting luck, but we cannot deny the part that luck plays in anyone's success. I think a lot of people kind of downplay it, and in reality, luck plays a big part. So I was lucky to be in the place where I am. I was lucky that the market was going up during those times. I was lucky some opportunities that came my way, and then I did my part, which was preparing. So I think one important lesson when you ask me about mistakes, this is a mistake that I made in stocks, but it applies for everything. So when 2020, when the pandemic hit and the market crashed, I had been waiting for that crash for so long. And when the moment that it hit, I'm like, okay, here's where I make money. Here's where I make the big money. And I invested in all the wrong things. And I ended up losing a bunch of money when I should have been making a killing. Because it was right after like the big crash of the pandemic but I invested in some oil futures and other things that I didn't understand. And what I realized is that I had been waiting for the crush, but I had not been preparing for the crush,
Yeah.
which are two different things. So for anyone starting out that you don't see the opportunities yet, nothing's stopping you from preparing, to be ready, to learn as much as you can, to be ready for that moment when something crosses your desk and you're like, I know what I must do. Because one thing is you also being able to recognize an opportunity as an opportunity. If you don't know, if you're not ready, if you haven't studied, they're going to fly by you. You won't recognize them. So it takes two things: one, recognizing it, and then seizing it. So that's why you prepare. Before I started in real estate, I had prepared for about 5 years, just learning. And I knew one day I will get my chance.
Yeah.
And when that window opened up, I knew what I was doing. For some reason, I didn't recognize that when I did it with stocks, but lesson learned. There's nothing stopping you from preparing, from learning as much as you can. And if you're prepared, you'll recognize the opportunities and you'll know how to take them when they come by you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And a good start of this podcast. So let's dig into like, how does a rock star become this analytical? Because I think it's when I think about a rock star, I don't think analytical. And it might be just like I'm very wrong, because I think if you're good at anything, you're probably very analytical. But how, like, where does that analytical part from you come? And why do you get, like, how can you, how should I say it? Like, how can you feel that it's valuable to spend so much time before making a decision?
I think it comes back to doing the work up front, which is something that I always enjoyed. So let's say when you write a book, it's like you're putting all the work up front and then you reap the rewards afterwards. So I was raised that way, and in my school it was that way. I'll talk a little bit about my school in a second, but it was like, do the work now and then you get the benefit for a long time. So when I moved from music to business, what I was thinking is I don't want to work all my life. So I want to put the work in right now, and then later on I get to enjoy. So that delayed gratification was always there. I think the idea of wanting to be a rock star was this image, this ideal that we have of what it is like to be one, but the reality is very different. So people dream about playing guitar, and I wrote about this in the first book. People dream about being on stage, and people dream about the performance part of any art or craft. And that takes like a very small percentage of what it really is to be in a certain craft or art. So people think about playing guitar and they imagine being on a stage and people singing along. And in reality, like 90% of the time you're alone playing scales and exercises. But I had this image of like being on stage and everyone loving you. And I think it's just you grow up as a kid, like thinking I would like to be admired. I would like people to like me, stuff like that. So I think it was an aspiration and not necessarily what really went with my character and with my personality. So it was just something that I think I fell in love with a dream that it was never meant to be. Even if I had made it as a rock star, it wouldn't have been the way that I thought meant to be a rock star. I was just like being drunk all the time, kicking stuff and bossing people around and then going to stage and people loving you. Absolutely. So, but yeah, I did love music and I wanted to, but I was never really good at it. And I was very aware of it, which I think kind of helped me because I took practice seriously, because I took my mediocrity seriously. Like, I don't have the talent of some of these other people, so I might as well just work as hard as I can. And circling back when I said that my school, so I went to a very different middle school and high school. I don't know if we had the chance to talk about that before, but we didn't have teachers. So we had tutors. It was based on the Socratic method of like learning through questions. So we would have study guides and we would study on our own. And if we had a question, then we'll go to a tutor and the tutor would guide us through questions into knowledge. So it's this idea that I was in control of my own learning. So learning never felt like something being imposed on me. It felt like a process of discovery. So I fell in love with deconstructing things and seeing how they work. I fell in love with physics, chemistry, all this stuff. So my mind has always been geared towards that. But I think so connecting with music is I wanted the carefree, being in your body and in the moment thing, because that's what I didn't have. So because I was so analytical from the beginning, I was craving the freedom of those who are pure artists.
Yeah.
And I think that's what attracted me to it.
And that school is called the Socratic method?
No, so the school was based on the Socratic method.
Okay,
So
so
Socrates believed that we came with knowledge and it needed to be extracted through questions. So it was based on Socrates and his teachings and how he believed that knowledge was supposed to be taken out of people instead of imposed on them. It was a very different high school. Yeah.
That's very cool. And how did your parents get interested in this and propose this to you, or did you propose it to them?
They were very concerned. I think it was a friend of a family member who owned the school, and she told us about it and like, hey, why don't you let your kid try this and see if he's a good fit? And my parents were kind of reluctant because they didn't understand this idea of like you study on your own. What do you mean you don't have teachers? But they gave it a chance and it worked well. Like I adjusted to the method. It was also a school that was based on excellence. So for every subject we study, we needed to take an exam and you can only pass it with 90% or more. And if you failed, so this was one of the principles of the school, is like, it doesn't matter that you fail, go back to the material and relearn, but we won't let you pass until you have mastered this subject.
Mm.
So they said, you have the capability to do it. We won't let you pass unless you master it. So everything I study, I had to master it and then pass the exam with above 90. And then they say, if you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. That's life. You go back and you restudy and then you get better. So very different values. And I'm so grateful to the school because now I can pick up a book on anything. Like I'm not scared to learn on my own. A lot of the crazy stuff that I learned throughout my life, I did it on my own.
That's very cool. I didn't know that existed. And
yeah,
I'm sure it exists in other places of the world too.
I believe so. The closest thing to it, I think, is called the Montessori. It's a different method, but it's kind of like the closest to it. My school also rewarded independence. Like if I did my work and I showed consistency and that I was responsible, then they would tell me, okay, now you're at the level that you don't need to come to school. Like we know you're going to do your work. You can take breaks whenever you want. You can take vacations for as long as you want. Like you manage your time however you want, as long as you're doing your work. We don't need to be on top of you. So by the time I graduated, it was the highest level, and it meant I didn't have to go to school. I could take vacation for as long as I wanted. I would just go to hang out with my friends, but I didn't really need to go to school because they knew I was going to do my work and submit it on time. So,
wow,
yeah,
that's super cool.
very, very different set of values. It wasn't for everyone though. Like many people got stuck behind because since you were learning at your own pace, that meant I could finish a degree in 6 months if I wanted to, if I was disciplined enough. But other people could take 2-3 years to finish one degree.
Yeah.
So like for some people, they realize I'm never going to graduate from high school because it's taking me 2 years to do 6th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why do you think you're disciplined? Like, where do you think that comes from?
I don't know. That's a very good question. I never thought about it. Well, one has been the passion behind the stuff that I learn. So whenever I take on a project that I'm crazy about, I don't even want to go to sleep. Like sleep almost becomes this thing that I don't want to do, but I kind of have to do. And I reduce my life to the minimum. And I could live in my living room. Like I move to my living room and wake up, sit on my couch and work until I'm exhausted, fall asleep on the same couch, wake up the next day, do the same thing. And it's not a sense of pleasure of this learning when I'm so obsessed with a project. It's almost an itch that I can't manage to scratch completely. Like I'm frustrated that I'm not getting to the end of it. And I could go months like that. Now I learn to pace myself a little bit more, especially as I take on projects that are longer and longer. I can't burn myself out. So I learned to just pace it and be like, every day I do what I must do. It doesn't matter how much I progress. If it's like 0.1%, it doesn't matter. Eventually I'm going to finish it. So I think I gotten better at that. But the discipline has always been there, and it comes from a sense of enjoyment and passion for what I take on. The caveat on that is, for example, I work every day on a book if I'm writing a book, or I work out every day. And I've had friends that said, like, how come are you so disciplined? And this is a different type of discipline. Like, how come are you so disciplined? And I say, I am not disciplined, and that's why I need to do it every day. Discipline is doing it 3 times a week, because then you can take breaks without stopping completely. If I do something twice a week, like one day I'm gonna be like, you know what, I don't want to do it. I'm gonna push it to next week. When it's every day, it's like I don't need to make a decision. I wake up and I know I'm doing it. So it actually takes more discipline to do it a few times a week than to do it every day. And that was a realization for me a couple of years ago. Like, oh man, it's easier to just never stop than to do it every now and then.
That's very cool. And I think that's what happens with in life. You say you do something every day, and then you do it less, and then you do it even less, and then it disappears from you, and it's hard to come back. I never thought of it that way, but that's pretty cool. Let me ask you about your writing process, because I'm very curious, because I've been following your journey, and like when my writing process is completely different from yours. I make a decision that I'm gonna write the book, and then I decide when I'm going to be done. But I admire your journey. Like, you're doing so much research, and you said, I don't even know when it's going to be done. And like, can you just talk about that process? And is that your fear of missing something, or is it your devotion to create a masterpiece, or a combination of both?
I would say it's a combination of both. So the way I'm thinking about this new book is it's a book on philosophy. Now, there were some challenges there because I thought I could just read my favorite philosophers and then kind of work from there. But I realized is some of my favorite philosophers were influenced by other philosophers that I don't like that much. But then to understand the one that I like, I need to understand where he came from. Like, what were his influences? So for example, I love Friedrich Nietzsche, and Nietzsche was influenced by Schopenhauer, and then Schopenhauer was influenced by Buddhism, and then Buddhism was kind of the rebel child of Hinduism. So I had to go all the way back and then study Hinduism, Buddhism, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche. And then since I love Nietzsche so much, I kind of need to know what he read. Like, how was he fed? You know, what did he eat mentally? So I'm reading the books that he loved. I'm reading the philosophers that he loved, because he got his ideas from there. So I'm trying to get into his head, and there's no other way to do it than to do that. So for example, if you wanted to get in my head, I'll be like, read this 20 books and you'll understand a lot of my thinking, because I've been influenced by those people. So if someone wanted to write a book based on my life philosophy, they would need to understand how I was influenced, where I come from, what was my story. So not only read the biographies, but also read the philosophers that influenced them, and then the thinking that influenced them, the books that influenced them. That's one part. The other part is I feel some sense of responsibility towards the reader. So let's say there's this philosopher, Hegel, and he's a complicated philosopher. Is not one that I like much. So I've read about him. I understand the basics of his philosophy, but I feel like I owe it to the reader to read his actual work, as obscure and as difficult as it is. So I can talk from a position of like, even though he doesn't play a big part in what I'm writing about, hey, I went through this because that is just proper procedure. So I feel like it is my responsibility, if I'm putting out a book on philosophy, that if anything that I've read or that influenced any of the philosophers that I like touched something about Hegel, I need to go there and do my work. That is my responsibility. And maybe none of this is going to come out in the book, but I know I turned the stones that I needed to turn. So that's important to me.
And why is that important to you?
Because of that, I feel like it's a responsibility towards the reader, that I did my work, I did my homework, and I looked what I needed to look, and it's not included on purpose because I found no value in it, not because I didn't know about it. So like, hey, I read about this, but it's not my thing, and that's why it's not in the book, not because I never learned anything about it. So a lot of the philosophy that I'm talking about, and I'm very much is very much in opposition to many of the precepts of Buddhism. Yeah. But if I want to talk about those things, I need to learn about Buddhism. So I had to go and study Buddhism. So even if it is to criticize certain things about it, or some things that I don't agree with, or even to just provide a counterpoint to my philosophy or what I'm proposing in the book, I need to talk about it from a position of understanding, Like, look, I read about this. And one of the realizations that I came about is that many people who talk about Buddhism is a watered down version of what Buddhism as a set of beliefs really is. So when I was reading Introduction to Buddhism from the Dalai Lama, I was like, this is not what Silicon Valley people who suddenly turning to Buddhism talk about. They think it's meditation, mindfulness, and compassion. And Buddhism is so much more, but people pick and choose whatever they like, and then they still call it Buddhism. I'm like, no, man, there is way more to this. And you either not call it Buddhism, or then you include everything else, but you don't get to cherry pick that way and still call it Buddhism. So I feel like it is my responsibility to go there. And if I don't agree with it, and if I mention it, and if I'm providing a philosophy that is a counterpoint, to understand what I'm talking about, to see the other side of the argument, even if it doesn't make it to the book. I feel that's my responsibility.
It's very admirable. And I think the cool part with this is that most people that read the book will never know that it didn't made it, and they would never know that you didn't do this. So and I know you're saying it's your responsibility, but you're choosing it to be your responsibility. So I'm curious, like, why is it so important to you?
Sure. I think it's that I want to be able to write knowing that I turned those stones, and not from a position of ignorance, not from a position of I didn't do my homework. Like I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm choosing to hate it from the offset, you know? So like, if you disagree with something, you're supposed to read about it and understand what is the counterpoint. And I read this quote somewhere, it's too bad because I can't remember who said it, but it was last year, and someone said, no one's smart enough to get everything wrong. Okay? If you were to get everything wrong, you would actually have to be really smart, because even just pure chance, you would get some things right. I'm like, wow, this kind of opens up the doors for me to read even the things that I disagree with, because there must be something good in it.
Yeah.
So that's why I go through all these sources and all these other things to understand, like, okay, this doesn't go there, is never going to make it to the book, but I know I'm talking from a position of understanding and not from a position of ignorance. So at least brush off on these things, at least have the basic understanding, at least see what their arguments are, you have them in your mind, so you can create something that is more nuanced.
Yeah.
Which I think it applies to everything. I mean, you can't really take a radical position without understanding the counter position. Yeah. It's just a good exercise in both logic, and sometimes you find things that are amazing, even in the people you don't like that much. There is this quote from Nietzsche that says, you must learn to love your enemies and hate your friends. It's just good process.
Yeah.
It's just opening up your mind to different ideas. I know.
No, I love it, man. And I think, I mean, but the one thing that is, I think is so hard is that you're an artist, you're a true artist. How do you make sure that you actually finish the book? Because there are so many amazing artists out there that go down this incredible rabbit hole, but how do you know when to stop and to make it into a presentable, piece of art?
Yes, that's a great question. Well, one is that I already did it once, so I know that it can happen again. Like, I know I won't just leave it open and never finish it. So the fact that you do it once, it kind of gives you that confidence, like, okay, I know that I can put a stop to it eventually. And then I talked about it in the previous book, this idea of kind of bestism. It's like you do your best, even if far from perfect. It's just when you know you did your very best and you can't make it any better, that's when it comes out. So there was this paragraph that I tried to fix, and I rewrote it something like 40, 50 times. And at one point, I'm just looking at it and said, at this level of skill as a writer, I can't make this paragraph any better. I tried, and I couldn't. It's time to move on. I did my best. So I try to keep in mind that it's not perfectionism, it's bestism. It's like, did I do my best? Yes. So if I think I can improve it, it's like, okay, keep working at it. But if I think that I've tried and tried and tried and I just couldn't make it any better, okay, it's time to move on. I did my best. And that's all that anyone could ever do. So it's perfectionism that gets in the way. And if you're just thinking, you approach it with the sense like, I gave my best and I know I couldn't have done any more, then you move on. I don't think there was anything in the previous book that I thought that I cut corners. You know, there's this idea of done is better than perfect. And sure, like perfectionism can be a trap, and it's another form of procrastination caused by fear. But also rushing to the finish line just for the sake of finishing is mediocre. There's no point. I didn't want to just finish a book. I wanted to create a book that I was proud of, that I could read. One of the things that bothers me right now is that I haven't improved that much as a writer. So when I reread my previous book, I still find it good, and I should read it and be disgusted by it.
Yeah.
Be like, I hate this writing, because that would mean I got better. So the fact that I read it now and I still enjoy the writing is like, I haven't gotten better fast enough. I should be embarrassed by what I wrote last time.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll get there this time.
Do you write every day, or do you how's your like research process go? You read, like, let's say I give you 10 books. You got to read this for your book. Like, how would you approach that, and how would you take notes, and how would you work on that?
Great. So I'll read the books, and I'll be taking notes and underlining.
Fast reading, or like how long does
Then-
it take for you to read a book?
It depends. It can take me a couple of days. Lately, I've been ramping up the reading, so I need to do a combination between audiobooks and actual reading. Also, one of my eyes is kind of failing, so it makes it harder to just read. So because of that, I had to start doing audiobooks. But what I do is I don't listen to an audiobook while I do other things. Like, I'm really focused on what I'm listening. Because otherwise, my beef with the audiobooks, which I didn't like before, is that it doesn't engage you in the same way that reading engages you, that it forces you to be there and think and kind of have a two-way street with the author. But if you stop everything else, if you're not like exercising or doing the dishes while you're doing the audiobook, I'm actually sitting down, like paying attention to it. So I do that combination to get to the volume of books that I'm doing now. Like minimum, I'm doing at least 4 a week, which I've never done before. I mean, I really ramped it up because I have a list, or I had a list of about 400 books that I wanted to research for the next book. I'm like, I'm never going to finish. So I either cut down on the books that I want to read, or I need to ramp up the reading and basically turn this into a full-time job. Cutting was not an option because of what we talked about, the responsibility towards the reader and stuff. So I guess reading is going to be my life. And I spend a lot of the day reading and listening to audiobooks. So, okay, back to your question. I'll read something, take notes, underline, or save stuff. Let's say it's an audiobook. Then I transcribe everything to a digital document that is the summary of the book. My notes, my underlinings, all these things. If I have ideas in between, if I get inspired by something, I'll write it down, but it's nothing structured. Like right now, I'm not writing chapters or stuff like that. I'm just writing, it's just random writings. Whatever comes into my head by the readings I do, ideas I have, I'm putting them down. Once I finish with all the books, let's say it was 10 books you told me. So I read all the 10 books, I'm taking notes, underlinings, I transcribe everything. Now I have 10 documents in my computer that are one for each book. Then I go through every underlining, everything that I say, and I categorize it. I say, what does it talk about? So let's say each book had like a couple paragraphs on meditation. So then I'll tag it. Okay, this paragraph talks about meditation. And I'll do that for every one of those documents. And then I take everything that was meditation and put into one master document that is just meditation. So I have one master document that is everything I've ever read in my life about meditation, even if it came from a business book, from a whatever book. Now it's in one single document called meditation. So it's my master document. So hundreds of books, every part that talked about meditation from wherever it came, now it's in one master document. And if I want to write a chapter on meditation, now that document becomes the skeleton. So there is a lot of one reading, taking notes, underlining, and then categorizing stuff. And as I categorize, chapters start to appear. Like I see some category growing. So right now in the book, just to kind of put concrete examples, I have chapters on grief, I have chapters on depression, chapters on anxiety. So everything I've ever read about anxiety from hundreds of books now goes into that document. And that becomes the skeleton for writing the anxiety chapter. And then I'll go one by one, start writing the chapters. So that's kind of the process. It's a long process. The transcribing is tedious, but I can't really complain, man. I mean, everything is tedious. Like any
Wow. Are you
any
would
profession that
actually-
you go into.
How taught who taught you this? Is this your own process or did you learn this from somebody?
This is my own process, but many people do it. Later on in life, I found out that's kind of how Ryan Holiday works. That's how Robert Greene works. They do what is called a commonplace book, which is like everything you read kind of goes into categories. And then as you see categories growing, you start thinking, oh, this could be a chapter for a book. So I've always done that with knowledge. So I have a master document in my computer that's everything I've ever learned. And all the summaries of all the books that I've read, everything's there. So that's how I like to work. That's how my first book kind of came about. I wanted to create a master document for learning for the rest of my life. And at one point I had so much information. I just thought, you know what? I probably am not the only one trying to figure this out. What if I put it out there for other people to benefit? So that was it.
No, it's beautiful. Is that when you do this process, is it joyful or is it more like a focused, hard gym session that you're like, I gotta do this?
It's like a focused gym session, but I think I gotta do it. But after you do it, you feel good about it.
Yeah.
So there's this line from Hemingway that says, I don't enjoy writing, I enjoy having written.
Yeah.
It's the same idea. While I'm doing it, I'm complaining in my head how hard it is. But like that's the point. It's the fact that it's hard that makes it meaningful too. And then you're overcoming all these challenges that then gives you that joy of like, I did it. But yes, it is tedious. And when I started this project, this is kind of a cool idea that I've been thinking about. When I started this new project, I thought it's going to take me 5-6 years. I don't know how long. And I was very frustrated by that. And I thought, this is just going to take forever. And then it hit me. It's like, I'm so lucky that I have this long project. I have something to work on for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
This is a blessing. Like I get something to pour myself into, something, a reason to wake up every morning that is meaningful to me, that is purposeful. And I have this for years to come. It's not awesome. So it came from like, oh, this is going to take forever. But I can't just claim that it feels good every day. I mean, when I look at my Amazon wish list for the books, sometimes I feel like I can't read. And as fast as I read, it doesn't make a dent. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And what happened to your eye? Are you okay?
Yeah, I had a cataract on this eye, and I think it came from martial arts.
Yeah.
So I might have gotten hit at one point. I did martial arts most of my life. So
Yeah.
what the doctor said, like, even if you got hit when you were 8 years old or 10 years old, is going to develop later. So I had to get surgery, but I see blurry. So my eye gets really tired when I try to read. It's okay. I mean, Charlie Munger, the sidekick of Warren Buffett, then I found out that he missed one eye. He had a one glass eye and he was a reading machine. I'm like, I'm making excuses for myself. Come on, Nick. just do the work. Stop complaining.
Let me ask you about your martial arts. So what, like, how had that helped and influenced your life as an author and also as a business owner?
Huh. I don't think I've ever made the connection between the two, but it has to be there. And I think, well, part of it is discipline for sure. Part of it is the humbleness that you get from martial arts when you get submitted by someone better, but also when you get to teach someone that is below. It's kind of this dynamic when you're learning from someone better than you, and then you're giving back by teaching someone there. So I've been lucky enough that along the way I found not necessarily official mentors, but I had people who were willing to share what they knew, being a couple steps ahead. And I've done that then for other people who wanted to learn real estate. And it's like, hey, just come over, I'll teach you what I know. So there's this that's very present in martial arts. There's kind of like this community where everyone's learning from each other, and then you learn from the ones that are a little bit farther along the path, and then you teach the ones who are kind of staying behind your path. So that's a nice part of martial arts. I think there's a lot of getting humbled and helping each other.
And I'm curious, Nick, how, like, when you become like obsessed with a topic or like doing this, how does that translate into your relationships in life and getting people close to you? Like, how have you been able, is that something you struggle with, or has that been easy for you, or how does that work in your life?
Well, definitely struggle with that. And so one of the things is most of the things I do are very much lonely projects. So reading, you're by yourself. Writing, you're by yourself. So I was spending a lot of time just at home, being alone. And even though I'm mostly introvert and I like to spend time alone, I do realize that my mental health takes a hit if I spend too much time just on my own, locked up in my house. Um, Friends also is difficult because I would always be like, no, I'm too busy working on this project, and this is all I want to do. So it becomes this obsession that consumes you, and then you can see the harm that does kind of to your social life and to your mental health, because we're supposed to be surrounded also by your friends to have more contact with people. One of the biggest challenges now with this new book, which is philosophy, kind of revolves around what is a life well lived and being more in the world, because I've always been in my head.
Yeah.
So now it's like I want to be more out there, like engage with this world, with this body, with this reality. So what's been challenging is that I came back to Montreal with this idea, like I'm gonna spend more time with friends and I'm gonna spend more time with people. So one friend asked me for a coffee. He's like, "Hey, let's go for coffee." And I was just about to tell her, like, "No, I'm working on this book." And then I realized, like, this is the point of the book.
Yeah.
I'm writing about how important it is for you to be engaged with the world and be with friends and spend time with people, because in the end, it's all about people. And I'm about to say no to socializing to work on this book about how I should be doing what I'm projecting.
Yeah.
So I'm mixing it. And that post that you mentioned about me saying, "Hey, I'm gonna be working at this cafe, existentialist style. I'm gonna be here every day from morning until early afternoon. Come say hi. Like come here." And then it will be a great thing because I don't need to be planning dinners or planning outings. So like come interrupt me and we'll have a philosophical chat and we'll just get it or catch up. So you know where to find me. Come here. And that's kind of my social part of it too. So a friend would be like, "Hey, um, could we meet on the weekend?" So this happened on Saturday, and I told my friend, "I'm gonna be at the cafe." I'm like, "Okay, man, I'll come join you." We chatted for a bit. He worked for a bit, and then I worked, and it was perfect. It was like, hey, this is a great way to balance it out, where I'm in this environment where I'm doing my work, but it's kind of a social environment because it's a cafe, and my friends can show up at any time, and I'm happy to take a break for 20, 30 minutes and chat with them, share a coffee with them, and then keep working on the book.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's difficult because, one of the most read books about self-development, Think and Grow Rich, which we all know about, and most people like. I don't know the full story, but a lot of, like, I've read, I need to go deeper, but a lot of what I've seen online was that Napoleon Hill himself had a lot of struggles in his life, but he's sharing a perfect success formula. And I think the challenge is, as high performers, we can get consumed by our projects, right?
Oh
And
yes.
and that, I mean, that's such a hard thing. And I don't really know what to do with that, because the whole idea of helping others is to show the way yourself. Uh,
Mm.
but I don't know if you've thought about this, and if you have any thoughts.
I've been consumed absolutely by my projects, but the thing is, I love it, and I realize I am built that way, and the satisfaction that I get from it is beyond anything else.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to carve out more time to be with people, to realize that it's not just the world in my head, and to foster those relationships. There's this beautiful line from Christopher Hitchens that the problem with growing old is that you cannot make new old friends. Old friends are only made with time. And so this shared experiences, things, and when you think back, this is kind of an exercise for everyone listening as well. Think about your favorite moments in life. They all include people, or at least most of your favorite moments include people. So how could we just let that brush it off, Like there is an essence there that is like you should be doing more of this. But we have this sense of like the grind, 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 and feeling guilty when you're not um, working on something. So part of it is just recognizing the value of spending time with people, that is not time wasted. I kind of came around, for example, with playing video games, even though I don't do it that much, and since I'm reading so much, I no longer have the time, but I would always feel guilty
Yeah.
whenever I wanted to play something. And then later on, it was like, well, a lot of people got together to make this for us, to create this art, this game. So I am being part of humanity by engaging with it. Same as watching a movie or going to a play. Like, why is it wrong to enjoy what other humans have created for us? So that kind of switched the way I was looking at it. Instead of like the wasting time, is like I'm enjoying what someone else created.
Yeah.
So there is a time for me to create, and there is a time for me to enjoy what others have created. And that kind of took away a little bit of that grind, grind, grind. You need to be being productive all the time. Because I made a lot of mistakes, kind of circling back with one of your first questions about the mistakes I made along the way. I spent a lot of time learning things that I didn't need, just because I was afraid of taking the actions that were really needed to be taken. So I kept myself busy as the excuse of like, oh no, I'm doing stuff, I'm being productive. Look at me, I'm working all the time, when I really didn't need that. Uh, I knew exactly what I needed to do, but I was scared of doing it. So I got myself busy doing all the stuff. I could have just as well actually enjoyed my teenage years instead of studying a bunch of stuff that I didn't need, and just being courageous enough to take the steps that were necessary. But that's not how I did it. So now I try not to spend time on the things that is just for the sake of being busy. But it's hard. I need to be alert all the time. Like, am I doing this because I don't want to feel like I'm not being productive, or am I doing it because it's actually necessary?
Yeah. And let me ask you this. So when you do your daily work, daily reading, do you have like a checklist, what needs to get done that day, or is it more open to exploration, depending on what happens?
For me, it's open. And I've tried it different ways. And this is just the way that I work the best. I usually have a few things that I could be doing. It's either reading or organizing, categorizing information, or rereading stuff that I wrote earlier so I could put it in the right categories, the right chapters, and or organizing quotes, for example, things like that. So I have a list of different things, and whatever I feel like doing that day, there's still things that need to be done. It's not like I'm creating imaginary work that doesn't need to be done just to avoid the actual stuff. I have maybe 5, 6 things that I know need to be done. And however I feel that day, like mental clarity, do I want to write some more? Do I want to read some more? Or do I want to go through information and categorize it? Do I want to look about the structure of the chapters? Things like that. So I'm very flexible in that sense. I mean, it's a very long project, so you have to find the way that works for you and that you feel energized to work on it, on whatever piece it is. Um, every day. Now, there's going to come a time where I've done the bulk of the research, and it's mostly going to come down to writing.
Yeah.
And at that point, is basically you write every day, whether you want to or not. You sit down, you write, you rewrite, you edit, you fix things, and it's not always enjoyable. Most of the time, it's not. There's this funny story. I'll just share it with you. So when I was finishing the last book, it was every day editing stuff, and it can't be a nightmare. And it's funny because I kept saying that it was torture, and my friend said like, Nick, you love suffering. You're gonna finish this one and start another one. I'm like, no, I can't wait to be done, so I never do this again in my life. And a week or 2 weeks after I finished, like, I want to write another.
Yeah. Oh my
But
God.
in the moment, it felt like torture. So one day I was going to this cafe and they served me my coffee and they say, like, it's free for you today. I'm like, really? Why? It's like, well, because we saw you yesterday and you look so miserable. So we figured we messed up your coffee. I'm like, no, guys, not at all. It's just my daily life right now is coming to this cafe, looking at a screen and suffering.
Oh my
But
God.
the joy and that feeling of having written something good when you finally wrestle a paragraph into existence and it says it the way you want to say it and it's the right cadence, like everything, just your thinking is correct. Oh my God, that joy is like putting a puzzle together is so good. But doing it is not necessarily enjoyable at the time. But a lot of things are like that. Some video games that are tough, when you remember the parts, oh, that part was so tough, oh, that part was so annoying. But somehow you enjoy the whole process. Is because the overcoming gives you that joy. Is the having to level up, who you become, how your skills improved by this challenge, this struggle, is what creates that satisfaction. So that's going to be a lot in the next book, the part of struggle and suffering place in our lives and how they also lead to satisfaction. They can lead to suffering, they can lead to misery, but they can also lead to satisfaction. If you think about the stuff that you're the most proud in your life, you most likely had to struggle a lot to get them.
Yeah. Final question. I mean, one thing personally, when I have longer projects, sometimes I fear that I'm not gonna finish them. Not because I'm not disciplined, not because I have a track record of not finishing stuff, just because it's so long. So I'm learning from you. I want to get better at that because I know when you do longer project, you can also put out something that is better, right? And we talk about 4, 5, even 10 years in the grand scheme of things. It's very little because we know that people have had projects that are 100 or 200 years that they start and they know that it's not going to be finished in their lifetime. So any last piece of advice and words for people that are scared of taking on this project and scared of, not finishing because life is going to, interfere?
Yeah, two things. One, I read this from James Clear, the guy who wrote Atomic Habits, although I think he got the quote from somewhere else. I can't remember. But he would say is the don't worry about the time because the time is going to pass anyways.
Yeah.
Like, so it takes 5 years, but the 5 years are going to go anyway. So you might as well be doing something throughout that time, and then you'll have your project. Because if you keep complaining about how long it's going to be, the time is still going to pass.
Yeah.
So it's like you're going to get there. But then the other way is you're shrinking time frames. So you took on something that is going to take so long, you have to divide it into pieces. So you think about winning the day. And this is like a proven strategy for people who have to deal with addiction. Is like thinking about, I used this example in the last book, and we'll take them as an example, like as much respect as they deserve, like anyone going through addiction, we're going to borrow their example and their strategies for something that we need to do that is much less challenging than what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
But the way they're taught is if you think about being sober for the rest of your life, it's overwhelming, scary.
Yeah.
And most people just give up. And like the feeling that must have of like, I can't touch this thing ever again is too much.
Yeah.
But if you say, I'm not going to drink today, it's manageable, it's doable, it's achievable. So what they do is they shrink timeframes. So the way I think about my book, and it could take 3, 4, 5 years, I don't know how long it's going to take, is I wake up every day, is like, I'm just going to put in the work for today.
Yeah.
And it feels sometimes like you're just chipping is a very small chip, and it doesn't matter. You walk every day and you renew that effort every day. Every day you show up and you don't think about how long it's going to take. You just think about, can I win this day? And that's all that matters. And one last thing, and this I do it with working out. So I work out every day, and when you think about it, it's an infinite game, right? So this idea of like finite games, infinite game is one that you just play for the sake of playing. But sometimes it's challenging. Like you think, oh my God, I'm gonna be working out for however long I'm alive, and I try to do it every day. So the hardest times when I was training for a photo shoot, and it was really tough. And what I kept thinking is like, I can quit, but not today. I'll quit tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then the next day I would do the same vow. I was like, I'm gonna quit, but not today. I'll do it tomorrow.
No, I love it.
And that's
You
it.
can always quit, so why quit now?
Yeah, it's just quit tomorrow, Nick. It's fine. I guarantee you tomorrow, but not today. And then the next day will be the same idea, like not today, not today, not today.
I love it.
So when you know you can give it up, it kind of gives you this relaxed feeling. You're like, okay, at any point I could just say no more.
Yeah.
But not today.
Nick Velasquez, thanks again for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much, man.
It's been 4 years. hopefully I can see you soon. Hopefully the universe will take me to Montreal. I have a newborn son, so I don't know if it will
Oh,
be in the
amazing.
books. Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. But
Yes,
who
congrats.
knows? It might be in the books, and I would love to sit down and, talk to you face to face. I also want to say thank you to everybody that is here listening. We live in a day and age where everything is quick, and I'm doing this long format to slow things down, to get you to kind of think about your life. And even though it's just 1 hour, and Nick is talking about a 3 to 5 year project here. So uh, think about your life and create those projects, because if you have dreams, if you have goals, if there's no projects, nothing is ever going to happen, which is kind of sad. But if you do the work, if you chip away every day, you're going to create something that's exciting in your life, and hopefully you can share it with others and help out. If you enjoy this show, share it with somebody that needs to hear this message, subscribe, give us a review, and all of that good stuff. Thanks again to everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.